It's been about 5 years since I built these gates. I should have supported them back then, but today's the day. Notice how I angle the drill away from the edge to get a better bite. I don't want the wood splitting down the road. When I shot this, it was really hard to get a good camera shot, so I shot both gates and then I combined the footage from the two of the camera shots that showed the best, so that's why I'm bouncing back and forth. It's the same process though. You can see how it would be pretty much impossible to get the two bottom screws in without taking the door out. So I just drilled a couple holes to let the screws in from the side. It will be plenty strong. So I'm sorry I lost the footage from when I built the cable ends. But what I did first in the garage with the vise is that I made the first loop and put the clamp on, so I wouldn't have to do both ends over at the gate. Just made my life a little easier. You could see it in the photo when I first carry them in at the beginning of the video. I already have one loop end done. You can see here that when I installed this into the cable, I already put the clamp on before I looped it through the bracket. This way I wouldn't have to open and close the bracket, all I had to do was tighten it. Again, simple one-handed tricks, makes my life a little bit easier. Now that I have the cables on, it's time to set the initial tension. What I mean by that is when you first pull these tight, a lot of the slack will go out just stretching the cable for the first time. So I'm over tensioning a little bit on purpose so that when I go to relax the cables and remove all the slack, then I'll have a good bite on the turnbuckle for maximum adjustability. What I'm trying to avoid here is the turnbuckle bottoming out and then me having to back the whole thing out, take all the slack out, and try again. The point of this bar is I was afraid that the wind would blow the gates open. Keep in mind that each door is 4 feet wide, so you're talking about an 8-foot wide opening. When I originally put this gate in, there was a 4x4 post right at the seam between the two doors that I had to remove to be able to drive the tractor in. So I added this bar across the middle of the door because the wind in Indiana can get really nuts here, like 45, 50, 60 miles an hour a couple times a year. I just didn't want any damage or the wind blowing it open, especially because the kids or the dog could get out. It has nothing to do with security. Because the doors are saying so much, I had to put quite a bit of tension on them. That caused the doors to twist a little bit and warp out at the top. This is just temporary. To get the 2x4 in there, it was really tight, so I just used it here to bend the tips of the support brackets out a bit to make it easier to slip in. So now that I've put a little stretch into these cables, I'm loosening the turnbuckle up to its maximum, loosening the cable clamp, pulling all the slack out, and then retightening it. This will give me a good range on the turnbuckle to be able to adjust up and down, especially over time. Once I installed the wind support bracket, it pulled all that twist out, forcing the door to go up. The door was still curled because the cable applies a straight line force. I put this camera shot in here specifically to show how much twist is in the doors. So what I'm doing here is I took some standard galvanized angle brackets and pounded them flat. These clamp the cable to the door to try to remove some of the twist by holding the tension closer to the center of the door. It's as good as I could get. But you'll see once I put the wind support bar on that it takes virtually all the warp out of the door. So what's really going on here is that even though the doors are under a lot of tension, because the bar's in place, the door is flush with the top of the fence. Now this is a temporary condition because as time goes on, these doors should work their way up as I open and close them over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So really I need to come back in 4 to 6 weeks and show you the end result. Because what will happen is the door will probably go up too much and I'll have to let a little tension off. But it took 5 years for these doors to slowly fall, so it's going to take some time to pull them back up to where I want them. Once I have the final tension set, then they should stay just fine.
Okay, so let's see how we did. In general, the gap is significantly improved, and actually this right-hand door is too improved, and we need to back that off. So what I'm doing here is just pushing down on the door because that's the final height it will be, more or less, when it sinks a little and the cable tension takes back up again. And for the final product, let's see how this came out. I would point out that now that it's been a while, the bow in the door has come out with this bar being in place. You also notice how easily it fell in. What I was shooting for here was about a 1/4 inch gap, which is what I originally had built it as. Looks pretty good to me. At Eva's request, I attached these inexpensive handles to the door to make it easier to open and close them. I also pounded a pipe in the ground to keep the stationary door where it belongs. By the way, if you've never been to a demo derby, I'd highly encourage it. I had a good laugh because the announcer's voice was very familiar to me. It took me a while, but I realized it was Neil Coe from Dig Drive DIY. I had a good laugh when I looked to my left and there he was. I'll put a link to his channel in the description. It's pretty good.